So if you know me, one of my biggest pet peeves is rostering shitty fantasy football players. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking out the trash, dumping it on someone else's yard in your league, and leaving them with your mess to clean up. That's right, we're talking through 5 players in today's episode that I am trading off my team. It's that player you drafted in your league, and you just can't stop thinking about the guy you wish you never picked and would have pressed the draft button on somebody else. We're going to be wiping the slate clean here, moving on to greener pastures, and getting you some better options, better assets, and better lineup pieces to work with in your leagues this season. I've went ahead today and also recorded a must-target video here for week 1 with some options and some ideas to get you started for those trade situations here to kick off the season. But of course, if you've already got some trade situations in the works, feel free to drop those down in the comment section below, and I'll give you my 2 cents on what I feel for in those trade situations. So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's video. Drop down, smash that like button before we get started, and let's get into our first player that we're looking to move off of here in week 1. Of course, if you haven't done so already, make sure to click that subscribe button and turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content here and are notified as soon as we post a new video. Right now, we're posting about 2 long YouTube videos a day, some short content as well on our TikTok and Instagram accounts, as well as here on YouTube Shorts. If you guys want to check that out on house here, otherwise go check out our Twitter and our other links in the description of today's video. So if you've been following me since last season, throughout this offseason, through my Dynasty portion of the year, by the way, those of you that play Dynasty Fantasy Football, I'll be looking to post some in-season content for that this year. But A.J. Brown's been a guy that ever since his illustrious trade here to the Philadelphia Eagles, I have been all out on. He has been a player that I have not really loved in this Eagles situation. I just haven't been able to justify the draft price that we're paying for him in any way, shape, or form. We saw last season and throughout his entire career with the Tennessee Titans, he has been forced to be exceptionally efficient on each of his passing targets and opportunities in that Titans offense. And now in Philadelphia, he may have to do the exact same thing at an even more extreme level. I thought that there could be a situation where in that contract dispute, maybe he lands in a situation that will feed him the football, that will use him as a high-volume target, but that's not where he finds himself landing here. And the quarterback pairing with Jalen Hurts is not something I can find myself fully getting behind either. Jalen Hurts has his moments. For me, as a fantasy football quarterback in a vacuum of his scoring potential, I absolutely love this trade for Jalen Hurts. I think between his rushing ability and the significant improvements that he can make as a passer this season in terms of his overall output, it's very, very good for his chances to finish as a top 3 fantasy quarterback this year. But I don't love how his value impacts those around him catching passes from him this season. A.J. Brown, of course, being the top target in this Eagles offense, is the most impacted by that situation, and therefore I think we have to talk about it, and I would personally sell high on him either pre-week 1 here or for a player who I do think has some boom potential in this week's matchup. Just being a wide receiver 1 for this team, potentially being able to. I'm a bit concerned about Devontae Smith this week. I do have him on my must-sit list because I think it's going to be really hard for Hurts to produce 2 fantasy-relevant receivers in a given week. But Brown, though, being that top dog in this offense, having a lighter matchup in the secondary, having a physical player that I think can move players around in Detroit, I'm comfortable and cool with him this week. Again, he could have a boom matchup and open the door for another sell-high opportunity in week 2. But for me, I don't trust Jalen Hurts. I've been saying it here. He is 29th in passing attempts per game, where the Eagles' offense was a season ago. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback, is 30th in catchable pass rate. That's not a number you want to hear. There's 32 teams in the league, meaning you have 32 starting quarterbacks, assuming no one gets injured, which, yes, is not the case. But that puts him in the bottom 3 in terms of players at the quarterback position and passing accuracy. Not something I'm interested in hearing. He was 5th in interceptable passing opportunities last season, so the amount of times he threw a pass that was interceptable by a team's defense, he was top 5 in that category in a bad way, meaning you've got errant throws, you've got throws that are not on target here. And when a guy like A.J. Brown, yes, he comes from Ryan Tannehill, but he was very, very effective off of play-action pass opportunities and effective and able to get him the ball downfield on those deep shots. Hurts is someone I worry a bit more about with that. The Eagles actually ran the ball more per game than the Titans did a season ago. They were the number 1 rushing offense in the league. Obviously, having a quarterback like Jalen Hurts adds on to those totals. and they still don't have a guy like Derrick Henry. So what Derrick Henry does, despite the fact that the overall rushing totals and numbers were better for Philadelphia, is he sucks everyone in a vacuum up into the box and forces forces the defense to respect that run game every single snap. Whereas for this offense, guys like Miles Sanders, yes, they just brought in Trey Sermon, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, even Jalen Hurts and the rushing opportunities that he provides to the table. They are not instilling that level of fear, and therefore I don't think the defenses will respect that play-action game nearly as much as they did for A.J. Brown in Tennessee. Again, I'm not expecting him to have 135, 140 targets this year. That's just not something he's done throughout his career. And like I said, you're moving into another high-volume rushing offense. Something internally has to change here if he's going to break out and have the highest target totals of his career here in 2022 with the Eagles, because that's just not something that's been a factor in any of his fantasy situations up to this point in time throughout his NFL career. The next name that I'm looking to sell here is Jaylen Waddle, another third-round wide receiver, a guy who was the wide receiver 18 in drafts based off of Underdog's best ball ADP. Use code SFS on Underdog Fantasy to get yourself hooked up with our all-access pass for the 2022 season on sizzlefantasy.com. All you got to do on there is sign up and deposit $10 or more. They'll double your money up to $100. That's yours to keep and play with. And on top of that, I'll get you hooked up within 24 hours of signing up with site-wide access with my weekly positional rankings for fantasy football this season and personalized lineup advice all year long, completely free for using that code. Jaylen Waddle here is a guy. I want to talk through some 2021 numbers just to kind of lay the scene for what is expected on my end here and what I think is to come for this Dolphins offense here in 2022. So basically what we've got is a Tua Tagovailoa-led offense, which, for the purposes of this, I think is completely fine. I'm not the biggest Tua guy, but what I will say is I think he's effective, and he showed last season that he was capable of getting Jaylen Waddle the football in ways that he needed. However, last year, Jaylen Waddle had 8.9 targets per game as the clear and concise wide receiver one for this offense. He averaged 6.5 receptions per game off of those 8.9 targets. However, the changing dynamic here, the biggest factor at play, is into this offensive situation also comes Tyreek Hill, who averaged 9.4 targets, so another half target per game more than Jaylen Waddle. However, he was slightly less efficient, averaged 6.5 receptions per game. My, 2 cents synthesizing those numbers, the reasoning that I think that Jaylen Waddle's reception totals are the same on a per-game basis as Tyreek Hill, despite the difference in overall targets per game, is simply because Patrick Mahomes is throwing Tyreek Hill more downfield passes, which have a lower conversion rate, versus the short and underneath looks that Jaylen Waddle was seeing consistently on a per-game basis, getting the ball on bubble screens, jailbreak screens, all kinds of different stuff, short routes, drag routes, slants, hitches, all that great stuff. Not to say that he didn't run the downfield occasionally, didn't run a slot fade route, didn't go up on a post. He did that stuff occasionally, but this Dolphins offense was not in a position where they were looking to push the ball downfield. That's also something that I've been trying to be a truther about this offseason, is that despite Tua's deep ball passing accuracy numbers last year, he's actually tied for first in that category with Joe Burrow. And if you look at Joe Burrow's deep passing attempts per game, it's almost double what Tua did on a per game basis. So sample size matters as those attempts go up for Tua this season, which I'm assuming they will. I think that conversion rate of downfield passing success will dip as well. But besides the point here, the reason I don't love Jaylen Waddle and I don't love the situation in Miami offensively, the reason I do not think he'll live up to his wide receiver 18 draft stock this year is because I don't think him and Tyreek Hill can coexist at the same level we saw Jaylen produce last season. I think these are two phenomenal wide receivers, two very similar players in terms of their skill set, and for me, that's where the issue lies. If you had a situation like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, where you have one clear dominant slot threat who gets off the line of scrimmage quickly and can catch passes very short, attack the defense from multiple angles, and then another guy who's 6'4", 6'5", is a great possession receiver, can win jump ball, contested catch, box out situations, and have two totally different niche roles in their offense where they're not really impeding upon one another's opportunity for success, that's cool. You've also got Tom Brady there. In this situation, you're working with Tua. You have arguably 3 wide receivers, from Waddle to Cedric Wilson to Tyreek Hill, who are all undersized. They are all small and similar. You could call them a slot wide receiver build. Obviously, they're a lot more dynamic than that, especially those top two options. I just think it's going to be tough to continue shoveling both of these players the ball at that high of a clip to the point where it's sustainable and you know what you're getting every single week. Am I saying that Jaylen Waddle is not a one-touch scoring threat anytime the football enters his hands? No, I'm not. He's going to have boom weeks. He's going to have great performances. He's going to win some weeks and some matchups for some teams this season, much like an A.J. Brown might do. However, the conversion rate in terms of his consistency, how often he's doing that and how often that's the case, I expect to be much lower than his dependability level was a season ago. When you're paying Tyreek Hill, the clear number one receiver in this offense because of the contract situation that they entered into him, the draft pick opportunities that they gave away for his services on this football team, a 4-year, $120 million contract, and 5 draft picks to acquire Hill, you're giving him the football first. He has precedence. He is the guy who is the alpha in this offense. Waddle can be that. I think he should be that. I think that he will be that someday in some capacity if the Dolphins end up moving off of Tyreek here within, maybe he doesn't make it quite to the end of his contract, whatever the case might be. We're talking way too in the future here. The point being, for 2022 fantasy football, Jaylen Waddle is not it. He's not going to live up to his draft day investment and expectations. There were other more consistently reliable players that have similar upside, maybe not nearly as good on a per-game basis, but you can count on better than what Jaylen Waddle brings to the table here for this season. Nick Chubb, moving on to the running back position, is a player that I'm also looking to move off of here. The case for Nick Chubb is very simple. I've made it each season here on YouTube. This is year number 3 for us here at SFS. So thank you guys, obviously, for the support to allow us to continue doing this. But Nick Chubb, it's plain and simple. You're playing in a PPR league, get him out of there. He's a one-dimensional player that has a low ceiling at the running back position. Yes, if he stays healthy, he's probably going to chug his way into a top 12 running back, one finish, but that's not, at the end of the day, what you're looking for. He was a third-round draft capital investment in best ball formats. He was even earlier than that in some of our traditional season-long formats. You got to find someone else who brings more to the table in the receiving phase of things here. There are some very concerning metrics with Nick Chubb and the situational change here in Cleveland that I don't feel great about either. That makes me even more pressingly wanting to move off of him. Now, personally, I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't draft a single share of Jaylen Waddle, A.J. Brown, or Nick Chubb in any of my leagues, so I am not really in a position where I'm looking to trade these players. However, I would be looking to hit that panic button, get rid of him. I'm not saying hold a fire sale and get rid of him for a bag of Cheetos, but what I am saying is that things could get ugly should situations not play out as good as they have in years past. The primary factor for that being, I'm not a Baker Mayfield guy, but I still think Jacoby Brissett is a downgrade. I don't know how reliable, dependable, and trustworthy he is on a per-game basis. It's just not something we've seen, a Jacoby Brissett offense leading a top-level fantasy running back. You're going to have to move the football downfield, sustain drives, and give Chubb an opportunity to consistently succeed here. And especially without that pass-catching involvement, you're going to have him score touchdowns. And unless he's ripping off 60, 50, 40-yard, even 30-yard TD scores, unless your football team can move the ball downfield, you're not going to have high levels of opportunities to find success and convert and in those situations. So, again, back to the metrics here. Let's actually talk some numbers, not just situational play here. I don't think that this offense is going to look much different in the running back approach in 2022 than it did in 2021. And we had some very glaring issues here. First and foremost, I'll toss out the receiving numbers. A 6.3% target share, not very great. He was 54th in the NFL last year with just 25 targets. And what I will say is that number, even though he missed some games, is probably a little bit higher than it would be in a normal season. We saw him play contests with Kareem Hunt injured and unavailable to play. So, they're still not using him a ton in that respect, but still there were games with Hunt out of the lineup that Chubb saw some receiving involvement that he probably normally wouldn't have seen with Hunt out there. So the next thing I want to talk about here is he was 27th, so a bottom 5 player in the NFL, a bottom 5 starting running back in snap share percentage. Very risky business here. 51.7% of the time he was on the football field last season. That's not cutting it for me. I said this throughout the summer. if you're flipping a coin and telling me that heads or tails 50-50, about that same number is the amount of times that my potential RB1, maybe my high-end RB2 is going to be on the football field for me this season, I'm not digging it. I'm not buying it. Kareem Hunt's coming back healthy this season. We already know he's going to take some goal line opportunities, be somewhat of a vulture there. Again, he is the pass-catching back for this offense when healthy. And you've got other factors and forces coming out of the backfield. So I'm out on Nick Chubb. I'm looking for somebody else. I'm going to either make a package deal and try and get a pass-catching running back too, or somebody else that can provide better lineup services for me. Damien Harris here, another name. Before we get into him real quick, make sure you guys check out some of the links in the description of today's video. Give today's episode a like if you're enjoying, and check out sizzlefantasy.com if you're looking for an extra edge in your leagues this year. Again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, so I won't spend too much time here. But basically, personalized lineup advice coming straight from the horse's mouth here, that being me, that you can get on sizzlefantasy.com. You can either type it in a separate search window or scan the QR code with your phone or something if you're watching on another device, and that'll take you over to our website where you can see our different options to get set up with our plans for this year. So, Damien Harris is my fourth trade away target. Get rid of him. Remember, we're dumping our trash on your league mates' lawns. Probably not eco-friendly, so don't recommend actually doing that, but you get the point. It's supposed to be a joke. Damien Harris, getting back to it, our fourth trade away player for Week 1 fantasy football here. We just talked about how I'm out on Nick Chubb, one of those reasons being his 51.7% snap share. I apologize. You can probably hear the sirens in the background of today's video. It sounds like there is like an ambulance or something outside of my studio here. So 51.7% snap share for Nick Chubb. Damien Harris, much to my surprise, has a far worse number than that. He was on the field for the Patriots on just 42.9% of snaps last year. That ranks 42nd amongst running backs, so not even in a starting caliber role there. And it was a player who had just a 4.5% target share of this Patriots offense. So you're talking about getting worse from Hunt in both of those metrics, and he is an incredibly one-dimensional player as well. So all the same red flags for Nick Chubb at a greater extent, a greater level here. And the reason that he was able to maintain such fantasy relevance last year was literally goal line work. He had 15 total touches. He was top 5, I believe it was, in red zone rushing attempts last season. That's how he got those points. Nick Chubb did not have the same level of red zone production as Damien Harris. That's how those two ended up finishing not too far off from one another in total fantasy points throughout the season. That number is not sustainable. We will see some drop-off here, and the primary reasoning for that being Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson is a guy who's been talked about at great lengths this offseason as a potential breakout candidate for this offense, maybe the team's starter by the end of the season here, and Stevenson's just a better pass-catching back. There's a lot of reasons that you can draw cases here and make arguments for why he should be on the field a greater percentage of the time than Damien Harris. Again, the primary one being that Stevenson's a more natural pass catcher. He's got the same big, large size, whatever you want to call it. I was redundant, but he's got the same build, maybe even bigger, to get out there and be used in the goal line as a third and short situation back. He's just a more dynamic player. He also has some fantastic metrics, although the sample size was small. He was 4th in juke rate last season, meaning his ability to make defenders miss in open space. He was 15th in yards created per touch, so showing you his ability to do more than just run straight and run somebody over. He's actually creating more yards on his own as a running back. And just overall, like I said, he's a more dynamic running back. There's been a lot of buzz about him. He's been getting some first-team reps with that Patriots unit as well. So I don't like Damien Harris in Week 1 here. I recommend you sell before this opening week matchup. I think things will get ugly for him, and I think that overall it'll be an ugly game for the Patriots, so I'm looking to get out on that as soon as I possibly can. David Montgomery is our final sell player here, another running back for today. 3 RBs we're selling, 2 wide receivers. Go check out that must-buy video again if you haven't done so already. But for me, David Montgomery, we're talking through our last player here in today's episode. Remember, if you guys are enjoying, make sure to like that, or click the like button rather. Helps me out a ton here. Montgomery's case for why you should sell is simple. You've got a workhorse running back playing for a very poor offense that could fall victim to just a poor situation around him. Not only is this a defensive regime leading the charge for the Chicago Bears here, but this is also a team with a poor offensive line, a second-year quarterback, and just not too much that can actually be depended upon here to play out for our teams this season. So you've also got a situation, many reports coming out of Chicago's camp that Khalil Herbert is looking at a bigger role. No, I am not expecting a change in starters for Chicago. David Montgomery is the guy. He has proved to us he is a capable and effective three-down workhorse running back. But for a guy who has seen top 4 numbers and opportunity share the last 2 seasons, being at 80% this past year, 90% ranking number 1 overall at the metric, meaning, when you're on the field, how much of the rushing work are you actually getting? That number will decrease this season with Khalil Herbert obviously being a factor there. And then he saw top 5 numbers last year in red zone opportunities. The reason I bring this up is he only converted 7 of those into touchdowns. Why that's important is because red zone conversions are harder than it seems. Yes, you're closer to the end zone, but there's also less opportunity for error. Obviously, I just said the margin for error is smaller. It's harder to convert in those situations. And with poor offensive line play, young quarterback play, and just a struggling offensive dynamic, that's not the easiest thing to convert into easy 6-point plays, which he did at an abnormally high level in 2020 when he had a white-hot finish to that season. So I'm not feeling super confident, even if Montgomery sees a high volume of red zone touches again this year. How many of those will the Bears actually get in position to convert into touchdowns? There was a lot of stalled out drives, a lot of disappointing field goal endings, and I don't like this offense. I'll just say it as it is. I don't like the offense. I don't like the defense. I think there'll be a lot of negative game scripts, and I think there'll be a lot of struggling for Chicago's roster as a whole. So, especially this week, being 7.5-point underdogs against Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers. I think that ends badly if David Montgomery doesn't find the end zone. Let's put it this way. I find Montgomery to be a touchdown-dependent play in bad situations this season in negative game scripts where the run game basically becomes a non-factor, which could happen at a fairly high clip. And if he's not converting those red zone looks that he got last season, again, top 5 in opportunities in that area of the field a season ago, what makes me more optimistic this year? The offensive line play is poor. Like I said, they brought in Alex Leatherwood, currently not listed as a team starter. So, of course, Chicago would bring in a former first-round pick and not play him, especially at one of their most dire positions. And if the team struggles to move the football, if drives are stalling out, if they're punting a lot, turning the football over, I think there is some hope for Darnell Mooney just being force-fed the ball. But for Montgomery, I think he could fall into a situation where his ceiling is very, very capped, and his floor at times could be shaky and be very dependent on his ability to score a touchdown. So there you have it. 5 players I'm trading away for Week 1 of 2022 Fantasy Football. Thanks you guys so much for watching. I appreciate the heck out of every single one of you guys. And of course, if you have questions for me, put those in the comment section below. Let me know your trade situations, your trade scenarios. I'm happy to help with that stuff. And I will see you in the next video. Peace out.